Okay, well, today, this scroll is the scroll I spoke about in 2 meetings ago.
Oh, I have to bring this back just to see the whole thing.
Hold it up high. There it is. Anyway, it's we were debating about the meaning of it.
There you go.
It has the basic meaning of enlightenment is exactly 1 split second as you are, nothing different, but just a change of perspective, a change of understanding only. And so this is the first character up at the top. Peter can explain them because our teacher, Kano sensei, that we bought this from, is went over the details of it. And last night, James Shi, who is in Taiwan, sent an email to us saying he had studied the words in Chinese to understand, and it's the second part of a 4-line poem. And it says, the first 2 lines say, both ends are broken off. And the second 2 lines are this is what this is based on. And the second 2 lines say, a sword against the sky, an empty sky.
Okay, that's what.
Anyway, this is a very famous calligrapher, and Peter can tell you about that now.
Okay. Back here.
Yeah, that's it.
You want me to hold it? Yeah, you hold it. Yeah, hold it. I'll put this in later.
As you can see, Chris is visiting. Not Chris. Mitch is visiting right now.
Yeah. So you can see all the notating.
Okay, there you go.
Well, first,
A little seasick.
Move over a little. You're in the way.
I'm
Move
the
to
way.
the right.
I'm the way.
Move to the right. There.
I'm the
There
way.
you got
Okay,
it
there
now.
you go.
Said
There
that
you
Okay.
Said that many
Okay.
times.
go. Okay, here we go. Okay, here is this person here.
Tibetan.
Is he Tibetan?
No,
No, he's Japanese, I think.
the Japanese. Yeah.
And so his poem is based on that 4-line poem of Chinese.
Okay, so on this poem right here, on the poem, let me go over here actually. Well, he's holding it. So I guess here. No, it
That's
doesn't look
good.
too well.
That's
Anyway, the top one is 1. The top is 1.
This guy's famous
And the
calligrapher.
second one is actually means the Ken, which means
Sorry, folks.
which means this right here, Ken, which means a sword cut. A sword cut. Ken, like kendo, the same Ken. Okay. This right here, which is in Japanese now ki, but what that means, depending on. Okay. And this one down here is a very common one. This is heaven. Well, but my hands in the wrong place. Heaven.
That's right. You got it.
Okay. And this translation here is maybe awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So depending, but the Japanese put their Chinese put their punctuation, put their prepositions after, and we put it before. So if we make it into English, this will go up to the top, and this means with 1 cut, or depending on 1 cut, heaven.
Yeah. So the cutting through ignorance.
The sword of wisdom.
And also the sword of wisdom, but yes, cutting, and so this represents this teacher. Some of you may know the name Yasutani. This guy. This was Yasutani's teacher, and so if you he was a teacher that was in the 3 pillars of Zen. Those of you who are go back that far, and his name was Harada. So this right here is it's Shogaku, not Shogaku Harada, Gogaku Harada, Shogaku.
That's not.
That's
they
not,
won't
that-
remember that.
that's not the right page.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's the person that is responsible for Soto Zen Rinzai to have come to the U.S. Although because his teacher, his student Yasutani came and taught in Hawaii to Robert Aiken and the group, and then he taught to Maizumi in Los Angeles.
So we all have a direct connection.
So we all have a direct connection. Yasutani was at Tassajara for a visit once, but Radharoshi died in the early '60s, I think. This is Radharoshi. And Jane and I actually studied. This is where Jane and I studied for 20 years, when we were in Japan. This was our temple, but the lineage has somewhat changed. But anyway, this represents the importance of realization.
Take that one.
Well, I try to get that. Well, they don't see that.
Well, I do.
I know, but I don't know how to get it.
Continue, do continue.
Just hit continue.
The one on the blue.
I'm trying to get my mouse to work properly.
Just go down.
Hold it. I'm not lined up, so the mouse is not lined up. Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, so the basic meaning was that one cut through ignorance is like Manjushri's sword. One cut through ignorance and heaven, it's like a description of what enlightenment is, or what a kensho is, some kind of breakthrough of your ignorance into openness. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to be looking at an empty screen. If I look up there, I'm not looking at you. Sorry about that. Okay, so I want to talk about how to inhabit yourself. So being present is more than just the body sitting in the present or the mind dropping away with thought after thought. Being present is feeling the present as well as seeing it, touching it, hearing it, or tasting a cup of tea sitting with others. If we want to know what the present is from the body's point of view, we have to inhabit all of the body without the interpretations of thought, which usually dilute it. If we feel an itch, for example, we scratch, or a tickle, we touch the place lightly. You could say that for a brief moment, without thought, we scratched or rubbed the spot that called our attention to it. We may have scratched even before we thought, what was that? Or rubbed our face without thinking, that tickles. For a brief moment, in silence, we had the capacity to act without thought. When we do Zazen, we consciously put aside thoughts, sensations, and emotions as they come up, but we're actively aware of the accompanying thoughts that come along with them. When we scratched without thinking, even for just a moment, we experienced silence, which we immediately covered up with thoughts right after. You could say the scratch without thought, the scratch silence, as it were, is important. But even if it is, we're still not conscious of it until our thinking takes over with a question like, what was that? So the scratch is mostly unaware until after the fact, until after we have a question. We must begin, therefore, to work on the unaware mind and to learn to feel comfortable without words, to feel comfortable in silence. We can't will silence into our mind, but we can become aware of the many small times it appears in us without any kind of announcement of its presence. We can wonder about silence as a presence beyond description. We can ask, what is silence? How can I bring it into being? But we can't will it into being. We have to wait for silence to answer us. We have to wait for silence to appear when conditions are ripe for it. But we must make the effort to become aware of our body and mind in daily activities. Awareness opens possibilities of silence in every aspect of our lives. Waking up, drinking tea, drinking coffee, bathing, eating, and working, even in communication. This sounds as if silence is a most special condition. It seems as though silence demands special preparation or activities to appear, but silence is our natural condition. Words are additions to us. Words are striving. Words are special. But silence has been a part of our lives from the beginning. We are so busy looking around at the world that we overlook our natural conditions of peacefulness, calmness, and silence. Now, the most we can do is to help increase open spaces within us. That is, to make spaces in our day to invite silence back into our lives, as in Zazen, or in walking, or doing a work that invites calm activity. We can start by the simplest and yet the most difficult method, which is we can just stop talking so much, except for immediate necessary work and relationships. If you try it even for a short time, you may be surprised by how calm your thinking mind becomes, how quickly it becomes calm. In Zazen and other activities that encourage awareness, we can watch our changeable, relentless, active mind with wonder rather than judgment. We can marvel at the life force it expresses. We can look for the natural formations in the ebb and flow of words that go across our mind that we find in water, flowers, earth, the stars, and anywhere we see natural phenomenon. We can look for those formations. We can observe mind activity as another phenomenon of natural form and shape. But instead of observing, we get hung up instead on the stories that they imply, on the memories that reinforce them, on the fears and anxieties that come because we cling to them. And then we forget what we are really witnessing in watching our mind at work. We are witnessing a great life force in action. We are watching us flow. We are witnessing us in motion. To bring about space and calmness when Zazen begins, we can inhabit all of our body with awareness. I believe Peter has spoken about this any number of times in the past, and today I'd like to reinforce it even more. We pay attention to every part of our body, head to toe, in parts, one after another. For example, when we sit down to do Zazen, we fill our head with awareness from the top of the head down to the jaw. We observe every part in between to experience its physical reality. We move to the neck and live its experience by inner touch, by motion, and by physical form. We inhabit our head to our neck with all of us, not with thinking, but using our senses as a guide. We can move through our bodies from shoulders to chest, from midriff, abdomen, hips, thighs, knees, calves, ankles, feet, and finish with our arms and hands forming a cosmic mudra, which is this mudra, thumbs touching, hands cupping. This seems like a lot, but it's only a very smooth transition from the top to the bottom of our bodies. We can move in a seamless way from one part to another. And eventually we do it in a way that invites us to be aware of the silence that accompanies this activity. We can physically and mentally inhabit our bodies and sit in a presence uncorrupted by striving. Just to be present in a posture and a mudra invites a new relationship with ourselves, a new shift of our priorities, a new relationship with space and time. As we sit inhabiting arms and legs, backs and abdomens, shoulders and necks, What doesn't belong to us can leave effortlessly. What belongs to us can return and integrate peacefully. We rise from every zazen a more complete person, whether we realize it or not, whether our minds are calm or turbulent. If we can endure the doubts and fears we feel that contend with our efforts and relax anyway, if we can do it enough to let our interior open a little more each sitting, we will find the fruits of it when we least expect it, which are an unshakable mind, a joyful heart, and a compassionate body, speech, and mind. Thank you. Questions, anybody?
Camera. Talk to the camera.
There. Questions, anybody? I still have to see whose hands are up.
You want to try changing the screen share option from dual monitor to screen mirroring? That way the people's faces are on the laptop as well as the TV.
Really? How do you do that?
What's that?
So basically, when you've got the laptop, however you want to get to settings where the display preferences are.
1 second here. Oh, it's a little hot. Okay. Unfortunately, well, I can do it just 1 minute. I got to do something else here. Okay. Yeah, because it's hard to use the,
Just try it.
well, see, I'm up there.
Yeah, so bring it back down here.
I can't bring,
Yes, you can. Just bring it down. Eventually it
please,
comes
please, please, please. Go ahead.
there.
Okay. Oh, no, that. Yeah, but I don't want, I want it over here. Oh, okay. All right. You're right. That's right there. But it doesn't, okay. And go to system preferences, right?
System preferences.
Yeah, I guess.
All right, and now you've got the window that has the 2 screens on it.
No.
Let me open mine so I can,
Close that one.
yeah, so if you go to displays,
System preferences.
What? But I can't close that on.
We'll just put it down out of the way then.
Okay. All right. You better do it. I might do it.
No, stay here. Don't go away.
Go ahead.
Don't
Go
leave
ahead.
me.
Go ahead. Go ahead. You got it.
Okay, so now what?
all right, so have you got display? Or
Yes.
well, mine
Oh,
says,
this one.
No, this is display.
Okay, we got display.
do you see at the bottom, AirPlay display :
Yeah,
oh wait, hold on, let me make sure. Yeah. All right, so if you click that arrow, do you see one that says screen mirroring?
yes. No, I just see streaming stick. Oh, here it is. I see it. Show mirroring options.
Oh wait, hold on.
No.
I think that's the G.
Yeah,
Show
no, sorry, not that one. More at the top in the center, do you see display, color, and night shift?
Yes, up here.
Okay.
Is there a 4th option?
No.
Huh.
That's well, yeah.
All right.
Arrangement,
Never mind.
color, and night shift.
Well, why don't you move on?
So, but those are the only, oh, but under display, are there any other options besides brightness or resolution?
Well, at the bottom of the screen, there's something called gather windows.
Try clicking that. All right, I can't, having trouble intuiting it without actually seeing your computer. But basically you can switch from having 2 monitors to just doing screen mirroring.
We can let
I'll-
go of this for now.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, okay, we'll try and figure it out later. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we can do it later. So if you have any questions, if you haven't already forgotten.
I got to go back up to there. Over here.
Yeah, Mike.
When you're talking about silence in zazen and stuff, is it that point where you're so into the moment that you're not thinking about anything because you're living the moment as it exists, you know, this very second type thing. And the minute that you start to think, you're creating noise and you're out of the moment and you're starting to drift behind what's happening at that moment. And so by talking silence, that is natural, because when you're in the absolute moment, there is no thinking. You're just experiencing, you're just aware.
That's right.
And is that kind of along the lines what you were saying?
Yes. Yes. The minute you start thinking, you step out of it.
So the whole idea is when you're silent, then you're in the moment. But the minute you start thinking, you're already behind and you're trying to catch up.
That's right. Yes. The thinking, whenever we think, we're immediately stepping away from the situation and creating like a third party, so that the connection with you and reality is separated by that thinking, by the mind working like that.
So it's okay to have a thought, but let it go by.
That's right.
Part of that moment. But the minute you go, I hear a car. What kind of car is it? Is that my neighbor? And all of a sudden you start going off on this dialogue with yourself.
Yeah.
That's when you falter. You know,
You step out of the moment.
yes.
Yeah. That's right. When you're really paying attention to something, your mind stops thinking so much. You may think a little bit here, a little bit there, but your mind basically calms down. But the minute you start assessing what's happening, your mind starts taking over every time. So when you move away from that, when you just pay attention to what's happening and don't think about it, then you start inviting this silent quality into your life, which is actually always there. It's just that like our bigger mind, we don't notice it because
we're kind of conditioned to react to a thought instead of just letting the thought go by. And so it's okay to have the thoughts. It's just don't let them take over the moment. It's just let them float by like a bird flying by you sometime, you know, just let it go by and you're aware of it, but that's all you need to do.
That's exactly right. If you get into any kind of judgment, then you change the nature of your thoughts even. So that when your thoughts are just naturally scrolling across your mind, it has a kind of beauty of its own, like natural formations everywhere have. But the minute we start thinking and grabbing hold of it, we twist them and turn them in ways which are not natural.
And then they impact the way you perceive something else later on, because you thought about it and you may have understood it incorrectly, but it can actually influence how you perceive something later on. And then you get tangled up again, and pretty soon you're bogged down and, you know, completely out of the moment.
Well, the part of the delusion of what you just said there, Mike, is that we don't really understand things when we think with our head. We don't understand them. But when we're just paying attention and things are moving slowly and flowing, we actually understand on a very deep level, but we don't understand it in a way that we can manipulate it or manage it, but we do understand it. But the minute we grab hold of it and try to understand it, we understand only a kind of twisted version of it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How does this relate to self?
Self is what twists it and turns it around to have another meaning. And self is what interferes between you and your really big mind.
So when we grab onto that thought, is that self imposing itself?
Yes, it is. Yes, it's self-exercising its sovereignty. And it usually takes over at that point. And so, yeah, thinking is an activity of self.
Does that relate to like the skandhas in mental formation?
I think
our experiences,
everything that has form like that
what
is
we're perceiving.
Yes, everything has to do with ourself, and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, that's how we understand many things about what we're doing in this world, but it's not a real understanding of who we really are, and it's not a true understanding of what really takes place in the world around us. But it is a superficial understanding.
We're just talking about just being.
Yeah, well, just being, like in Zazen, there's a different kind of understanding that starts taking over if you stop thinking so much at that point. So thinking just really, thinking appears to be so intelligent, but it's actually distorting everything in a way which is not very natural. You're welcome. Any other questions? Yeah, Joanne?
I'm wondering about kind of like practical application of this, because when you're sitting on your cushion just with your own thoughts, maybe the consequences of getting engaged in something that loops you and takes you away from your zazen, there's, maybe the consequences are pretty minimal. But what about like if you are maybe say in a work situation and you're involved in doing what you're doing, but then your awareness, what enters your awareness is like somebody else's behavior that could be destructive. At that moment, then of course you don't want to, like, I understand that whatever somebody else's behavior is, you don't, whatever judgments you apply to it or thoughts you apply to it, they could be completely distorted. And yet, if you see something where there's destructive behavior, what kind of approach do you take to an action,
Well, I think there's a kind of misconception here in what you were just saying, is that when you are paying attention, you are not really behaving unnaturally or differently than usual. The only difference is that the thought is not taking over and you are moving on a deeper kind of energy. You are not being moved by thinking things through, you're moved by just doing things. So when you're paying attention to everyday activities, when you're paying attention to everything that's happening around you, that's hardly like a special condition, it's your normal condition. And the abnormal condition is imposing thought as a reality, as if it was real, imposing it as if it can solve real solutions or it can deal with reality. And it's just a very superficial kind of activity that flows as part of our natural self. And the only reason it gets unnatural is when we pay too much attention to it and we put too much energy into it as if it's our main activity. Mm-hmm. And it's a helping tool, not a main activity. It's the tool we use to clarify situations. But what really understands situations is something much deeper in us, that's bigger in us, and does not waste time going through words first. We understand directly something, so that when you're involved in a situation, you would react with your whole being, because paying attention is our normal act of a whole being.
Yeah, so like, and yet when something does call for a solution and it involves another human being, I mean, it's, if I see a kid falling from a third-story window and I just move in to try to catch them before they hit the pavement, I get that. But when it's something where it requires, like, verbal communication, I guess that's where where I'm wondering about it, like how you, I guess something that some situation, or you're in the moment and you're observing, all the stuff around you, but then if there's something that calls for a solution or some action involving another human being, then, without actual verbal communication, in some situation other than like the kid falling out the window, where you just, physically move to, catch it, prevent somebody from dying or something, like, I guess I'm wondering about how you best approach it so that, you're not getting caught in making judgments about what you've observed, or is that making sense?
When you pay attention every minute or as much as possible so that your thinking doesn't take over, when you're really paying attention to what's happening around you, you react instantly and spontaneously, and you use your whole being, not just a small part of yourself, which is judging what's going on quickly. And you act much more naturally than you do when you're acting on thinking. It's
Yeah.
not a special condition to pay attention. If you're listening to a talk about something and you have to suddenly get up and act on it, you know, you would not have to shift to your thinking mind, as it were. You would simply get up and act because you're paying attention. If talking was called for, talking would take place. Whatever is called for, you would act on. But thinking, you would not have to go through the filter of thinking first.
You know, I believe that, like, I'm just thinking about something at work this week, and I believe that when I observed something and became aware of it, I did not act in the moment, but I stopped myself and then started thinking, and then realizing, observing, and noticing my thinking. But maybe by the time all that occurred, the moment was lost to actually maybe jump in and maybe interact in you know, an authentic, compassionate way after the thoughts had started, you know, doing their thing.
Yeah, that's a case where thinking is leading the way again, even if it doesn't seem that way. You know, when you're really paying attention to something, your thoughts really calm down a lot. And sometimes they just literally stop. And you're paying attention so much to what somebody is explaining or talking about, or you're doing, or just paying attention to the work you're doing. Afterwards, you have a very restful feeling, unless your mind has been raging while you're doing it. But the thing is not to become unnatural, this to go back to our natural state, which is one of quiet and calm and silence. And the thinking is a tool that we've elevated too high in most of our activities.
Yeah, I'm noticing that I'm seeing that moment, and it's going by so quickly before I act. You know, yeah, that's happening. I'm seeing that happen a lot to me now. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to go back to our natural self, not trying to assume a new state of special activity. We're trying to get rid of everything that's in the way of our natural being. And our natural being really is a very calm, peaceful, and quiet being. But we forget that.
We've got some background noise.
I know.
Everybody should mute.
Somebody has a radio in the background. We can hear another conversation.
Oh,
Thank you. Does anybody have any more questions? It's a subject which people need to think about more and practice more. So one way to do it is to sit down and go over your body carefully, and so that all of your body becomes physical to you while you're sitting, not just something you're thinking about, but actually feel the physical part of your body sitting. And try that when you're sitting and see if the calmness in your mind doesn't come more quickly. And just when you're doing anything, having tea, I would even suggest that you set a timer every day for 10 minutes in the morning when you sit or not sit, whether for those 10 minutes you do nothing but really pay attention to whatever it is you're doing. And you may feel unnatural doing it at first, but as you keep doing it every 10 minutes every day, you might find that you slip into a natural way of doing it very quickly.
Mindfulness. It's a mindfulness exercise.
A mindfulness exercise, as Mitch says. Yes, I was trying not to use the word because it gets misused a lot, but actually mindfulness is what it is. Mindfulness is just paying attention.
Mindful of one thing.
Yeah, just moving from one thing to another.
Our life is a
Joe?
balance.
Oh,
Our life is a balance. And you don't have to balance it to one side or the other. You just have to use the appropriate moment as it is. When you're communicating or when you're using thought only, and then you're in a different world. You're totally in the relative world. And when you're sitting, you are bringing your mind closer or very close to the absolute world, but which is the world of emptiness. But emptiness and relative do not occupy the same space at the same time.
yes, I do.
You're one or the other. Wherever that takes us, I don't know.
Hawaiian Sutra says they do.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's all right.
We'll have to have a family argument after.
Not an
after
argument,
lunch.
a friendly disagreement. Wait a minute, Joe has his hand up.
Actually, somebody else's hand is up, who's not on
No.
the screen.
It's Joe. Joe.
Joe?
Yeah, so what should be the attitude if you can't do that? Like let's say you try and try, but it's just not working out. How do
Just
you
keep trying until it does.
so same attitude if it starts becoming an expectation?
Yeah, you just keep doing it in spite of the obstacles. Whatever, like whether your mind starts trying to trick you by expecting or other things, you just sit through it anyway and keep paying attention. Keep paying attention. Just do it every day for 10 minutes and just see what happens. It's not something, I mean, your mind will fight you because it's been the boss for so long. You know, it's not about to take a back seat. So your mind will trick you in many ways. And one of them is making you think that now you're expecting, or now you're not really paying attention, or you're not really good at this, or you're not going to get successful in this, you know, whatever it is, just ignoring it. Just letting it rage until it wears itself out. Just keep doing it. Joanne?
So what is the name of this Chinese poem?
I don't know. We'll have to ask James when we see him next. He said it was from a 4-line poem. So
Is it so it's like some historic poem? Is it like before Zen came to Japan or after? Do you have any idea?
I think he meant that it was a famous Chinese poem because it was famous enough that a Japanese Zen master would make his work from it, you know, and probably because everybody knew it. It was a common thing of saying, you know, I forget how when the two ends are broken off and the sword leans against the sky. That's the second part.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll see James maybe Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, I mean, and we can ask him then. Everybody that hears this talk doesn't have any questions at all about what I said. You can dispute what I'm saying, you know, you don't have to agree with me. Rachel?
Not to dispute. It's not a direct.
Somebody go up.
No dispute. In the unnatural world out there, I mean, I am joking. Normal life, I'm not in an office like that now, but the thrust and parry and demand for debate, confrontation, I mean, it's especially now, seems to be inherent in everyone's work life, and not mine anymore, but it's still inherent in every situation I inherit. And does awareness or a certain composure based on awareness, is it like Bach, a counterpoint? I mean, yes, like Bach, a counterpoint, because I can't remain motionless when I'm in the middle of dealing with some professionals over things. So I'm really serious in terms, it's like music, and I think of Bach because of the counterpoint, melody, and the different instruments. In a certain sense, if you are aware within and paying attention in a really profound way to things outside, is it kind of communication can become like a flow? That's hard, but is that what happens? I'm talking about in regular life when you might have 5 people arguing in front of you and you're supposed to make the decision on what all 6 of you are supposed to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that would just be a normal everyday problem you would probably have no matter what, whether you have a thinking mind or a quiet mind, but probably you'd make a better decision if your mind was very calm.
Well, that's what I wondered, because calm minds I found are terrific. But to me, it does become like a music practically, because it flows even when the voices are raised. And I just wondered if my take on that was resembled what awareness can enhance when you're dealing with sort of the noise of regular life. Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's true, actually, Rachel. I think that the more we get calm, the more we see patterns everywhere in voice and even in dissension. You know, it's just we're ignorant of most of it because we're too busy with our minds. We're not really looking, or we're not really listening either. So if you calm yourself, really calm yourself by not giving into your thinking so much, or even not talking so much, then you hear all of this in a better form than you would just hearing noise. That's what I think.
Thanks.
Anyway, I'm not trying to say become unnatural, because what we assume to be natural is talking and making noise. And the confused mind, we assume to be a natural mind, and that we're trying to be special and be calm. It's not, it's the exact opposite. It's what the Heart Sutra says is the topsy-turvy point of view of ourselves, of the world, is that we think what's unnatural is natural and what's natural is unnatural. So we have it backwards. We have to try to calm the mind in order to see the reality of our life better than we do when we're just following our thoughts. So thoughts are not an enemy. They're natural to the world. They're natural to life, but they're not the boss of each person, and they end up being the boss.
So should you bring yourself back down if, like, you know, because it seems when the things aren't desirable, this is a good tool to use. But what about when everything's good? How do you keep yourself from doing the same?
That's the hardest part, is actually when things are good, because it's much harder, because pleasure gets mixed up with it all, and it's much harder to turn and look at things more honestly, because you really get caught up in the pleasure of the situation of things being good and a natural feeling that you really don't want things to change. But it's still an unnatural situation. Looking beautiful is still not natural. And the point is to look at the truth, and not to be caught by the goodness of it or the badness of it.
Beauties.
Huh?
Nothing.
No.
There is a different attitude towards things as your practice changes.
Yeah.
And the attitude that we have when we're starting to do Zazen, and that continues for we really do begin, we really are beginners right for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And at that point, then, you know, but when you come to the later part in the practice, where when it says the light and dark oppose one another like the front and back foot in walking. Okay, they go back and forth, but they're always the opposite too. And so sometimes what it also says this is also in the harmony, difference, and equality. It says, I have to paraphrase, I can't remember exactly, but in the light there is dark, but don't take it as darkness. In the dark there is light, but don't see it as light.
That's it.
So in our lives, there's motion and non-motion. The two natural states of our body are motion and not motion. And so in Zen, we learn how to reevaluate and look at non-motion. That's emptiness, non-motion. Okay? Motion is everything else in the relative world, including our thinking. Then finally, far beyond all those things, there's no longer, there's no longer distinction made between the two worlds. You don't say one is, they're just the relative world and the absolute world. You can no longer tell the difference.
Yeah.
So there are many, many stages that we can talk about during practice.
Yeah.
And our understanding will change with those stages.
Yeah.
Yes, Joanne.
I think maybe after hearing Rachel, maybe I clarified a little bit of what I was experiencing is that like there's a moment where I'm present and then I become aware that I'm aware. And then like the moment of beingness is gone, but you still may have, like Rachel's saying, 5 people in a room and you have to make a decision and still be present, but also not let, your thoughts take over. So the moment is lost, but the moment of beingness is lost. But then, if you're practicing like this, you want to be in that situation with as much presence as you can, leaving aside all the stuff that may pass by your mind. That's where maybe I get a little stuck, maybe not very confident. Because that's the hard part. Like once you're aware that you're aware and you're aware that the moment has passed, then you're kind of screwed. Or I feel that way.
Well, that's because awareness so far is like an unnatural activity, so if it comes and goes, it seems to run away quickly. But if you just keep hanging on in there and paying attention, don't think of it as awareness, just think of it as you're just trying to pay attention. And that's a very natural activity, but it's one that is, for some reason, is really, really hard to do. So just think of it as paying attention rather than anything else, or being mindful, as Mitch says, just really being present when you're doing something, not off somewhere else.
Okay, I'm sure I will have chance to practice that mindfulness this week at work. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Joe?
But isn't it doesn't go anywhere, right? Because the moment's always here.
It doesn't go anywhere, and yet everything is in motion. Yeah.
Everything's changing always.
Right, but if you think like, oh, I missed it, isn't it like, well, it's still here, right? So it's not like, it's just like it's still here.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but you mean
like if you say, oh, I'm not being present, but it's like you were, you still are.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. You can.
So it doesn't go anywhere. Like if you think it's gone somewhere, it's still here. Right. I think
and it's not here at the same time. One aspect of reality is never changes, and one is always flowing and moving and changing.
And meanwhile, you're missing the present.
Yeah, and meanwhile, if you're like debating about any of that, if you don't think about it's still here, it doesn't matter whether it's here or not. It's just you're present, and whether that's here or not here. At the moment, it's only here or not here if you're thinking it. And if you're not thinking it and you're just taking part in whatever you're doing, then it becomes an irrelevant point. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Anyway, we say, and when we put on our robes this morning, our rock suits and our robes, we said, field far beyond form and emptiness. One is the field beyond form, and another is the field beyond emptiness. And that's when form and emptiness become one, or cannot be differentiated anymore.
In that sense, you could say it's not here.
So it's not here, but it's here. Yes, Mitch.
My experience is that to be present is very easy, and you really have to work hard to be distracted. It's easier than people think.
Yeah,
to
I
be
agree.
present.
Yeah, I agree. It's the odd thing is that we think being present is difficult, and it's actually way more natural than being present with your mind somewhere else. Anyway, this is something we could go on and on about, and we can bring it up again. I'm sure it'll come up again at some point, but unless you have a specific question further, I guess it's time for service.